Hello, everybody. Welcome to class 23. Today we're going to be covering some more exotic sports.
Skydiving. What is skydiving? Parachuting, including skydiving, is a method of transiting from a high point in the atmosphere to the surface of Earth with the aid of gravity involving the control of speed during this ascent using a parachute or parachutes. For human skydiving, it may involve a phase of more or less free falling. The skydiving segment, which is a period when the parachute has not yet been deployed and the body gradually accelerates to terminal velocity. For cargo parachuting, the parachute may descent may begin immediately, such as the parachute airdrop in the lower atmosphere of Earth, or be significantly delayed, such as in a planetary atmosphere when objects is descending up under a parachute, following atmospheric entry from space, and may begin only after the hypersonic entry phase and initial deceleration that occurred due to friction and within the upper atmosphere. Use. Parachuting is performed as a recreational activity and a competitive sport. It is widely considered an extreme sport due to the risks involved. In 2018, there were 3.3 million jumps in the U.S. Modern military utilized parachuting for deployment of airborne forces and supplies. Special operation forces commonly employ parachuting, especially the freefall parachuting, as a method of insertion. Occasionally, forest firefighters known as smoke jumpers in the United States use parachuting as a means of rapidly inserting themselves near forest fires, and especially remote and otherwise inaccessible areas. Manually exiting an aircraft and parachuting to safety has widely been used by aviators, especially military aviators and aircrew, and passengers can escape an aircraft that could otherwise not land safely. Although this method of escape is relatively rare, in modern times it was occasionally used in World War II by German military aviators and utilized extensively throughout the air wars of World War II. In modern times, the most common means of escape from an aircraft in distress is via an ejection seat. Such system is usually operated by the pilot, aircraft member, or passenger by engaging an activation device manually. In most designs, this will lead to the seat being propelled out of and away from the aircraft, carrying the occupant away with it by means of either an explosive charge or a rocket propulsion system. Once clear of the aircraft, the ejection seat will deploy a parachute, although some older models just the step to the manual activation by the seat's occupants.
Chess boxing. Rules and requirements must have a 1,600 ELO rating in chess, must have a record of at least 50 amateur bouts in boxing or another similar martial art. Rules. A match consists of 11 alternating rounds of chess and boxing, starting and ending with chess. Each round lasts 3 minutes, followed by a 1-minute break. The chess rounds are played under time control with a total of 9 minutes allotted to each player, and no increment added to either player's clock after move is made. Decisions. A chess boxing match can end by any of the following: victory by knockout or technical knockout in boxing, victory by checkmate in chess, loss due to exceeding the game's time control, loss by resignation or in either discipline, victory due to disqualification of opponent by the referee and either discipline following multiple warnings for extended inactivity, overextending playing time, rule infractions, etc. This rule prevents a player who is in an unwinnable position in one discipline from stalling in an attempt to win in the other. If the chess game ends in a draw before the final round, one more round of boxing is held. If this round also ends without a clear victory, the fighter who is ahead on boxing points wins the overall bout. If the chess draw occurs in the final round, the fighter ahead on points is immediately declared a winner. In either case, if the battle ends with both fighters tied on points, the one playing the black chess pieces win the bout due to not having the first move advantage in chess. This scenario has not yet occurred in practice as of 2021.
All right, so this is fireball soccer, and this is pretty similar to soccer, except that the ball's on fire. And this sport is usually played in Eastern Indonesia. And the purpose of the sport is to welcome Ramadan. And if you'd switch your attention to the bottom half of the slide, Ramadan is celebrated in the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. And what you do during Ramadan is that you fast, you practice abstinence, and you pray more. And hopefully the results will be spiritual reflection, self-improvement, and heightened devotion. And then going back up to the top, how you play this game is that you first soak the coconut, which is the ball, in kerosene, which is basically like fuel or oil. And then they perform a pre-ritual, which is basically covering each of the players in salt and non-flammable spices. And then this split port is played in order to train the spirit to be impervious to fire and just overall be more brave.
So warm charming. It's pretty much a sport in England where competitors are in a 3x3 meter plot of land who can only have a piece of wood and a garden fork. So the mission of the sport is to get as many worms as possible to surface. So to do this, you just need to vibrate the soil some way, and that annoys the worm and they surface. So the record set in the sport was 511 worms, and this was set in 1980.
I did volcano surfing. Volcano surfing or volcano boarding is a sport performed on the slopes of a volcano. It is one of the most popular places. One of the most popular places for the activity is the Cerro Negro near Leon in western Nicaragua. Riders hike up the volcano and slide down, sitting or standing on a thin plywood or metal board. The sport is also practiced on Mount Yasser, on Tanah, Vanuatu, and Mount Bromo in Indonesia. Volcano surfing can be an extreme sport. Potential dangers including falling and getting cut by the rough volcano ash, breathing poisonous gases, contracting histoplasmosis, otherwise known as Caver's disease, or being hit by flying molten lava. Protective gear including jumpsuits and goggles is often used. Cerro Negro is also an active volcano, although the last eruption was in 1999. Mount Yasser is far more active and dangerous, with volcanic eruptions occurring every day.
All right, next I'll be doing Moko Moko boxing. Boxing or Moko Moko is another favorite sport of the Makahiki, which is a Hawaiian tribe. Backers of the contestants began each match with loud verbal boasting and taunts. So basically the sport started with talking smack about the other team. Opponents, both men and women, fought each other with bare fists, striking at each other's faces. Points were awarded for successfully evading an opponent's attack as well as for knockouts. Contests were sometimes fought to the death. Not too much is known about the rules of the sports, but you were supposed to stay in a small circle. It was a bare knuckle fight and you only aimed at the head, and points were awarded for direct hits and evasive moves.
Cliff diving. So what is cliff diving? It's an extreme sport that involves highly trained athletes diving into water from a very high and rocky cliff. And cliff divers are extreme athletes that have learned the acrobatic skills that allow them to take part in this challenging activity without severely damaging themselves. It dates back more than 250 years to the Hawaiian Islands, and over the centuries that followed, the sport would spread out to other parts of the world as well, with divers spending countless hours perfecting their skills to match the unique conditions of the place where they practice the sport. So, in this image, you can see like Cliff diving is basically just jumping from a cliff, and it's really dangerous because like the cliff is really high and hitting the water can like hurt you unless you do it like the correct way. And like yeah.
All right. Hello, my name is Jason, and today I'm going to be presenting the exotic sport of slap fighting. So, slap fighting. It's a pretty extreme sport, I would say. Slap fighting is where two contestants basically stand face to face next to each other with a barrier between them, usually being a stand or some kind of box. This box is usually up to probably waist level, and the fighters will usually hold on to this box and use it as leverage. In slap fighting, how it basically works is, of course, two people stand next to each other, and the two people and both of them take turns slapping each other 5 times each, and they're trying to knock the other person out or inflict the biggest slap onto the other person. In this sport, there are many different concussions and injuries of which come from getting slapped full force by another person. And many people actually get knocked out by slaps, and there have been many images and videos online of people just taking a slap straight to the face, them getting knocked out and falling over onto the ground. It is very common for many of the players to lose their balance whenever getting slapped. So for example, if somebody was taking a slap, many of them will usually lose their balance, maybe stumble back a bit, having to be caught by people behind them, and then they have to get back and get ready for their own slap. So the rules. The rules for slap fighting are kind of very simple. For slap fighting, you can only use the upper part of your palm, and this part of your palm can only strike the cheek and cannot touch the jaw, nor the temple, nor the ear of your opponent. If you hit any of those, it is a foul, and if you get 2 of those fouls, you are basically instantly ejected from the game. You lose. And then there's also another set of rules. It is also about evading the slap, or basically moving while the slap is coming towards you. You cannot like overly like move yourself while during the slap. So for example, I can tense my face during the slap, but I can't like move my face out of the way to try to prevent getting hit by the slap. That is not allowed. If you do that, that is also another foul. And as I've previously mentioned, 2 fouls equals an ejection. And so many players, especially in the slap fighting arenas, usually they have to take these slaps head on, and many of them just basically just stumble, fall over, because of just how strict these rules are and how hard it is to basically withstand a slap. Scoring. So with scoring, here's how it basically works. As I've already mentioned, these 2 men will stand face to face with each other, taking turns slapping. These men will also have no equipment of any kind. That basically means no gloves, no helmets, no basically protective gear for them to use. That is not allowed. And these competitors will take turns slapping each other until one of them either falls, or after 5 slaps, each person takes 5 slaps. After that point, then the players will basically be scored by a judge. These judges will then score these slappers by the amount of damage, I would say, damage inflicted to the other person. So for example, if one person were to basically go up, he slaps the guy barely moves, but then the other guy comes up, he slaps the other guy, but then like the guy who gets slapped stumbles backwards, that would be considered as the person who, like the second person who slapped, is a better slapper than the other. And this basically goes on for 5 different rounds until finally the 5th round, until somebody gets knocked out. These These judges will usually determine a winner. However, there have been rare occurrences where no winner has been determined. In these cases, it's mainly because one, the judge considered both of them to be equal in their standing, and because none of them achieved a foul. So what you need to do in slab tournaments is you either have to knock out the person in front of you, or you have to be able to get no fouls and still be standing. That is generally the tactic.
So next topic is sumo wrestling. So an overview of where sumo wrestling came from. It originally originated from Japan. And in Japan, it's considered a national sport since it's like so widely respected, the athletes who participate in it. And the sumo wrestlers themselves are required to live in the communal stables, which is like, I'm guessing it's like kind of like an apartment where like their meals, their rooms, everything are already paid for by the team. But living there, everything is strictly tradition. The way they eat, the way they dress are very strict. And if they break on those traditions, I guess, there's gonna be like punishments following it. So and also for sumo wrestlers, they have to eat a lot to build up their size to be able to compete as a sumo wrestler. So they have these daily routines that they follow, these schedules to be able to um, get themselves to the right size and weight and height to be able to compete at the right level. So some of the rules for sumo wrestling is during the match, if a person steps out of the ring, the mat, they lose. And usually this is only a knockout round, round of one, but best of one, meaning that once you lose, you're out of the tournament or the game. So the mat itself is 4.55 meters or 15 feet in diameter, which is pretty big as for a ring. And if any part of the body steps out of the ring, or if any part of the body touches the mat except your feet, you lose. So if a sumo wrestler step on the ring, even if you step on the ring, it counts as a loss for you. So if you're planning on becoming a sumo wrestler, don't step on the ring. So some fouls that will be called is hair pulling, which is pretty obvious. You just don't pull the other person's hair. Bending fingers. So when you're wrestling, you're gonna be interlocked with the opponent, and you're trying to like push them down, I guess. And when you're pushing them down, and you might want to like do some little tricks and bend their fingers to be able to like prevent your opponent from getting the better of you. That would be considered foul. Gripping the crotch area, especially for men, the crotch area is very delicate area, so gripping that part is a very big no-no. So that will be obvious foul. In poking eyes, same thing. Poking eyes hurt a lot, and it's definitely not good for the game. So it's best if you don't poke your opponent's eyes. Sorry. So competition. So all the professional games or professional matches are organized by the Japan Sumo Association. All the tournaments, games are organized by them, and they have a set standard for wrestlers to like for height and weight for the wrestlers to meet. If they don't meet it, then they're not allowed in. The matches, so each wrestler is organized, or I guess, yeah, organized into their specific rank or matches by strict hierarchy based on scoring merit, which is basically means how how well their sportsmanship, how well they take losses, how well they take wins, and how they act afterwards of the game. So they're not too like toxic, like talking bad about the other opponent. That's not good. So as I said earlier, it's all best of one. So once you lose, you just lose. There's no second round, no third round. You just lose.
The pitch. Quidditch is played on a grass field with soft boundary area that is 60 yards long and 36 yards wide. This is where most of the action takes place. Through the hard boundary area is 84 yards long by 48 yards wide. There are 3 hoops at different heights on each end of the field. The corners are similar to those of a hockey rink that they are curved. There are areas designed as keeper zones and penalty boxes. The equipment. 5 balls are played during cricket matches. The quaffle, which is a volleyball, 3 bludgers or dodgeballs, and the snitch, a tennis ball. A quaffle is used to score points, while the bludgers are used to knock out the other players temporarily. The snitch is the ball that must be caught at the end of the game. Each player must have a broom between his or her leg at all times. The players, keeper, which has the green headband, guards the 3 hoops, chasers, the white headbands, try to score points with the quaffle, beaters, the black headbands, throw bludgers to knock out opponents, seeker, gold headband, tries to catch the golden snitch, the snitch. A person dressed in yellow who wears a sock with a tennis ball attached to the back of their waistband. To catch the snitch, a seeker has to grab the ball as they would another player's flag in flag football. How it's played. The team that scores the most points wins. Teams score points in 2 ways. When the chasers throw the quaffle through one of the hoops from either side of the hoop, which is 10 points. And when a team seeker catches the snitch, 30 points. The snitch enters the game at the 18-minute mark of each match. The match ends when the snitch is caught.
Shin kicking. So what is shin kicking? Shin kicking is the sport where there are these 2 competitors and they kick each other's shins. It's believe it or not, it's actually pretty safe, and currently it's pretty safe. Before, it wasn't exactly the safest sport, I guess, but it's from the 17th century, and yeah, it originated in England. So the rules of the sport. The main rules are that you have to hold each other's shoulders, and instead of actually trying to hurt your opponent, you're trying to disbalance and unbalance them by kicking their shins. So like if you kick it hard enough, they topple over and they trip. So all the kicks must be beneath the knee. So you're kicking their shin. If you don't kick their shin, you just get disqualified. And then everyone are wearing these really thick protective boots, so it's pretty hard to get hurt. So the main competitions is the World Shin Kicking Championship, and that's also in England. And yeah, that's basically like the only mainstream competition there is for shin kicking.
Juggling is a sport played by 2 or more players juggling 3 juggling clubs each. It can be played in 2 ways: individually, where one person plays against another in a one-on-one competition, or in groups of 2 or more. The competitors attack each other in an attempt to make them stop juggling. All competitors start with 3 juggling clubs and juggle them in a pattern. At least one juggling club needs to be in the air at any time. A competitor is eliminated when they drop their clubs, they stop juggling, or an opponent stole their club and making the player unable to continue juggling. The winner is the last person still juggling in the 3 clubs juggling pattern they started with. Stealing is when a player steals an opponent's club. They will drop their own club and use their opponent's to replace it. Strikes are when a player throws all their clubs in the air and attempt to steal opponent's clubs. However, the player will be eliminated if any of their 3 original clubs hit the ground or is taken by an opponent before the player is in possession of 3 clubs. A foul is when a player hits an opponent directly with their clubs. Players are only allowed to hit other clubs with their juggling clubs. If a player is caught using excessive force when attempting an attack, they will be penalized. If it is clear that the player's intention was to take out themselves and the other competitor in a suicide attempt, they will be deducted 1 point. Kicking, tripping, spitting, headbutting, puking, or any other body contact other than arm to arm is not allowed. Throwing clubs at opponents is not allowed. Alternative ways to play. Aggravated 5-on-5. Each team would start with 3 players in combat. When a player is taken out, a 4th is sent in to replace them. The team would cycle through their players, and at the end of a time limit, the team with the most wins would win the match. And zombie starts as 5 versus 5. When a player is taken out but still has possession over 2 clubs, they become a zombie. A zombie cannot move but can use their clubs to attack nearby players. They can rejoin the game if a teammate throws them a club. The teammate who throws them a club will become a zombie since they would now only have 2 clubs. If a player is taken out but still has 1 club, they will become a paralyzed zombie and will need teammates to throw 2 clubs. If a player doesn't have any clubs left, they will become a decapitated zombie and have to leave the playing field. The game ends when all members on a team became decapitated zombies.
Shovel racing. Shovel racing is a snow sport that includes riders racing down a snowy hill on a shovel. Shovel racing originated from the 70s in New Mexico ski resorts where workers use shovels as sleds to move from one location to another. Rules of shovel racing. The rider sits on a shovel facing the handle and leans back with their feet pointed forwards and races down a snowy hill with the objective of seeing who can make it to the bottom the fastest. There are 2 types of shovels, typical snow shovels and modified shovel-based sleds. However, modified shovels have been banned due to safety concerns. Riders usually wax the underside of the shovel to increase its speed, and elite shovel racers can ride up to 70 miles per hour. Shovel racing gained massive popularity in 1997 and was featured in the Winter X Games but was removed due to safety and liability concerns. Shovel racing is still popular today, and the World Championships have been occurring in New Mexico for the past 40 years.
Ice climbing. So the basics are ice climbing generally consists of climbers making their way up a mountain with using 2 axes. There are many different techniques to ice climb depending on your skill level. There's some called like the 45 degree where it is a harder technique for pros or more advanced people to use, but they put the axe at a 45 degree and it does help them climb easier. To be safe, you will need to use a harness as you don't want to fall during this sport. So safety. Ice climbing also requires mountaineering boots as to ensure a safe climb uphill because you will be climbing a mountain the whole time. For ice climbing, you should also have a respectable amount of core training as you will be climbing with your arms, which is a very strenuous workout. If you're doing it for a very long time, you will need to make sure you have a strong core. Having gloves is also mandatory as the cold weather will make your hands hurt more and you need a lot more grip for the axes.